All right, well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's 2020 Connectivity Hero webinar. Today we have Drew Lentz, co-founder of Frontera Consulting, and also Mary Peterson, the Chief Marketing Officer at Cambium Networks with us today. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it on over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Riley. Hey, Drew, it's great to see you, as always. Yeah, we're really excited to have you join us today. Primary education and education in general has been a thing for the last year with all this COVID stuff. I mean, it's still in the news a year later. Maybe the narrative's changed a little bit, but it's still, you know, top of everybody's mind. And so we're really excited about what you've done with the city of McAllen, Texas, in terms of bringing community networking to help close the digital divide and give everybody an equal opportunity. So we're really proud to give you our Connectivity Hero Award of the year. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're very excited.
We've had such a fun time doing it. You know, it's one of those where this definitely strikes in the passion part of what I do and why I do what I do. So we were given an opportunity by our city commission and by our mayor, you know, to step up to the plate in our own hometown, which is really cool because it's not every day you get to work on a project that affects your neighbors and your family. And so we had to really put our best foot forward, and I think we did. We're loving it. We're having a great time with the network right now. So it's good stuff. That's
outstanding. Yeah, I hear you. In fact, the reason I'm in this industry is I love helping everybody get connected, right? Because the potential for people when they can get connected and the things they can do, it's amazing. So yeah, that's great work.
We're seeing a lot of that firsthand, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So what I thought we'd do is we'll start with, you can give an overview of your project, and then we'll just go right into Q&A. So audience, if you have questions, you know, type them into the question box and I'll ask them, or Drew, you can read them and ask them however you want. And then I have a few questions myself, but why don't we start with just you sort of giving the context for the whole thing.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for having me. You know, it's I tend to get a little passionate. So in my world, 10 minutes is really 40 minutes. So feel free to cut me off at some point, but only after the yellow background slides. Those are the cool ones. But yeah, please feel free to ask questions. I have the chat window open over here. I'm on a pretty big screen in front of me, so if you see me looking to the side, my window, my questions are over here, and there's some faces over here, and so I'll try and keep it focused. But you know, you all asked me to come in and talk about best practices for this network and building out municipal wireless networks, and so I've put together some bullet points of things that we saw, what we did. You know, some of the gotchas that were out there, and then I go into a little bit of the design and the architecture of what we're doing. But a lot of this has to do more with the why, and that's what we're finding a lot. We've, you know, ever since we launched this project in McAllen, LinkedIn has just exploded, you know, and the number of messages and phone calls and emails and texts and, you know, midnight phone calls from mayors on Sundays has just been out of control in a good way. And it seems like we finally, you know, it seems like there's a lot of work that we can do that's extremely helpful to people, and being able to rapidly deploy this technology, I think, is key. You know, this whole thing started with a text message from our local IT director that said, "I need you," and that was like the coolest text message to get. And so we showed up and we said, "What can we do?" And he said, "Look, we've got the funding, we have the resources, we know you know how to do it. Now's your time, make it happen. You've got 60 days to install as much as you can." And I said, okay, let's start with the number 1,000. So we focused on building out 1,000 wireless hotspots, if you will, utility poles with Wi-Fi connected via CBRS all throughout our community. So I'll dig into that a little bit. But first and foremost, please feel free to follow me on Twitter. Wireless Nerd is my handle on Twitter. You can find my blog at wirelessnerd.net. Be one of the 25,000 that visit me this month. We've got a lot of traction on the blog. So help me become a press analyst. I'm trying to get to like 25,000 a month. That way I can get press credentials for some of these shows. So make sure you follow me at wirelessnerd.net. Lots of cool content on my YouTube channel as well. And if you're a ham radio operator, KE5ZJO on your local repeater. So this is who I am, you know, and I put the fun little pictures down there at the bottom because I'm not just a talking head. You know, I love to get up in bucket trucks, and I love to get my fingers, you know, all beat up with Cat 6 cables, and I like to only talk about stuff that I've physically deployed personally. And I think that that's a big differentiator in what we do. We can talk about the products that are hands-on. And I say that as I sit in my house and I have like 6 boxes of Cambium C and Wave gear sitting right in front of my front door that we need to go out and deploy. So we're working on,
that's popular stuff there.
It is. I'm lucky to have got some.
That's a hot item right now.
It is. So feel free to follow me online, drop me messages, hit me up on LinkedIn. Please send me a message on LinkedIn, because if you don't send a message, I don't know who you are, and I just delete it, because I try and keep that one a little bit tighter. So you want to build a community network. That's kind of the way that this whole thing starts. There's a big question. And it brings me back to one of my favorite movies as a kid, One Crazy Summer, where Ak goes in to talk to his dad, and his dad says, well, you don't have a plan. Well, if there's no plan, there's no attack, and if there's no attack, there's no victory. So it always makes me think about that. And I probably said this line 100 times to the group that we were working with, making sure that we understood you have to plan this out properly, and then you have to execute it properly, and then you can celebrate the victory. But if you miss any part of that, planning to fail failing to plan is planning to fail, right? Or backwards. So the first thing you need to do is build that plan. And that starts with defining expectations. What is it? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? You need to define the expectations of what the outcome of this type of network will be. And once you do that, the most important thing is identifying coverage. Over the last 6 weeks, we've gotten a lot of people who are asking for these types of plans, and they say, we want to cover our whole city. Well, do you want to cover the whole city, or do you just want to cover where students live, where families live, where people live? Do you want commercial property? Do you want roads? Do you want railways? Making sure that you identify that coverage area is absolutely imperative. And then number 3 is the one that I really wanted to emphasize, because engineering and design is such an integral component of building any type of network, specifically this type of network. And we've seen a lot of people who come and say, hey, we're just going to go out to bid. We're going to bid this thing out, and we're going to put it out there, and we're going to let everybody kind of propose something, and then we're going to just choose the best one that's out there it's possible. We had a community not 10 minutes from here that spent $3.7 million. Small community, 50,000 people population, spent $3.7 million on a network that they were told was going to work the way that it was supposed to work. I called them up and I said, hey, you know what you should do first? Back up, get a certified group put together, a trained, certified, qualified group to come in, help them, work with them to figure out what it is that you're trying to do, build a plan for this, and then put that out to bid. Don't just rely on someone who's been in business for less than a couple of years, who doesn't know what they're doing, who has no track record and no history. If you put out this engineering plan and a design plan, and you go out to bid for that, it puts you in a situation of power where you say, you know what, we know what this is going to look like. We know how it's supposed to work. Now let's compare it apples to apples across the board. The next thing you have to do, obviously, is find the right funding model. And I think there's a big common misconception about the cost of this. They are expensive, but they don't have to be expensive. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is the ability to get creative with funding and financing on this, so that we can go into even small communities where the project is between $2.5 and $5 million, which is a big chunk, but figure out how to operationalize that instead of going out and saying, hey, we need a check for $4 million in order to get going. It doesn't have to work like that. We can figure out a way to make this happen that moves it along and starts to put the solution out there in place without having to wait for a whole lot of money to get together, or waiting for a lot of trenches to be dug. So finding the right funding model is key, especially because there's so many communities. The ones that are hit the hardest are ones that are smaller, that don't have this huge tax base, that don't have the ability to find $4 million. It's a lot of money. So we help you figure out how to do that. And then once you bid it out, or just award it to someone on DIR or on contract or whatever it is, whatever works best for you, use those vehicles to get going, because you can solve this problem today. You don't have to wait for fiber to be trenched. You don't have to wait for infrastructure to be built. You can start solving the problem immediately. And when you execute, we did 1,000 poles in McAllen, Texas in 60 days. That was like 70. They gave us an extra a week or two because of supply chain. But when you put your mind to it and you figure out the right way to do this, you can quickly get this done. We're serving 15,000 students every week, and it took us 60 days to build out that network. And we started from scratch. No pole attachment rights, no vertical assets, nothing. It was crazy. And then there's obviously the support component of it. So the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you define your solution, because that's really the key. Why are you doing this? What is it? Is it just because people need to go to school from their houses? Is it because, because there's a big pandemic? Is that the only reason you're doing this, or are there other reasons behind it? Are you truly trying to create a digital community that drives digital equity and inclusiveness across your entire community? That's the message that we've been preaching for the last 10 years. How do you make a community a connected community? And that's where I want to spend a little bit of time talking about it, because that's the key, right? If you can figure out how to bring everybody in, level the playing field when it comes to connectivity, level the playing field when it comes to digital inclusion, you can end up having all these amazing benefits. You can have workforce development, you can have educational attainment, you can have all these amazing things that come along with building that digital community. And driving digital equity is key with that. But it all goes back to why you're doing it. Are you trying to solve a problem? Are you trying to be a Band-Aid? Or are you really trying to achieve something? Because right now is the time when you can take advantage of the funding that's out there, the demand that's out there. You can go in and say, look, here's your chance. It doesn't happen all the time. Here's your chance to really create something impactful for your community. Best practice, something to think about. Think about what you're doing with your network. Who's going to be using it? What are they going to be doing? When are they going to be accessing the network? During the day, during the evening? What time are they going to be using it? Where are they going to be using it? Inside their house, at their grandparents' house, at their dad's house, at their mom's house, in the community, at a coffee shop? Where are they going to be using it? We've learned some really cool lessons about that. We have a lot of students who in our community in South Texas who spend the daytime with their grandparents, especially because of the whole school from home thing. You have parents and kids who are in a house, but mom and dad still have to work. Well, since school wasn't in session, they had to have someone watch the kids while mom and dad went to work. Probably pretty traditional in a lot of these rural communities, right? So when mom and dad go to work, where do the kids go? Where do the kids go? They go to grandma and grandpa's house. Well, do grandma and grandpa have internet access? Because the kids probably have it at home. They may have broadband at home, but do our senior citizens have it at their house? Do they have an emphasis on it? Do they need 50 megabit per second? Probably not. But when 3 children come in and all of them have to do online learning, it's going to consume their pipe pretty quickly if they even have one. So make sure you start to think about that. And why is connectivity important to them? Is it just for school? Is it for work? Is it for telemedicine? What is it that's driving this? And which devices will they be using? And I think that's part of the key part here. I guess we can all assume that they'll be using Wi-Fi. So a couple of gotchas that we have, pretty important things to figure out early. Vertical infrastructure, number one. Where are you going to put this equipment? I had a really cool conversation yesterday with someone where we were talking about why Wi-Fi doesn't work a mile away from a tower, and that sounds pretty weird for someone who's been doing wireless for a long time, because it's like, oh my God, but there's still a lot of people that don't understand the way that Wi-Fi traditionally works. So figure out where that vertical infrastructure is to get these devices as close to the wireless access point as possible. That's the key. Streetlights, utility poles, burying your own poles, figuring out how to leverage city assets and figuring out how to work with other departments in the city or the municipality or the county. That's key. Departmental coordination for us was easy because in the city of McAllen, we worked very well with everyone there, but talking to Parks and Rec so you can use their bucket trucks, talking to Public Works so you can make sure that all the power is run and the fiber and the utilities are run, working with traffic to coordinate traffic cones when you're out in a bucket truck 30 feet up installing an AP, making sure that all departments are on the same page is key. And I really have to give a lot of love to Robert Acosta with the city of McAllen. He's the CIO, because he worked behind the scenes to make sure that everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing when they were supposed to be doing it, which made it easier for us to do our job. And then supply chain. We were just joking, Mary and I were just joking about how hard it is to get some of this equipment. We ran into that. When you're ordering 1,000 APs at a time of a brand new access point, it's important to understand how that's going to ship, where it's going to come from, where it's going to go, what time it's going to hit your dock. A lot of that supply chain stuff can be
Hey, Drew.
Early. Yes, ma'am.
Before you go on,
Yep.
you talked about the vertical infrastructure, and the fact is you're using fixed wireless technology here. And I think a lot of people might think that fixed wireless requires climbing masts, like it's way up high and that sort of thing. So did you have to do any mast climbing on this, or how high up was the fixed wireless
infrastructure? Yeah, so a couple key points there, and I talk about the architecture here in a minute, but essentially what we did is we leveraged the existing public works infrastructure of our city. I like to think about broadband as a utility, and it was really cool to have broadband sitting on top of water tanks. And so in South Texas, we have about 100, 120 foot tall water tanks. The city of McAllen has 6 water tanks that we actually had wirelessly connected using Cambium gear. And then they went through and trenched fiber in line with this project. They trenched fiber to each one of those water tanks. And from there, we send the signal out from that water tank down to utility poles. So we did have to do some tower climbing on those water tanks themselves. We had to install the equipment up there. Some of them were older. Some of them didn't have the necessary halo or ring that goes around the top. So, you know, a combination of installed mounts and magnet mounts and all kinds of stuff to put up there. But there was a little bit of that was done, but we knocked it out in 2 days. I mean, we were installing 4 base stations in a day or 2 days on top of these water tanks. They're usually pretty well kept. We've run into some that aren't, but
Yeah.
and co-location wasn't an issue with some of the existing carriers. But the majority of the work that we did was on the utility poles, and those, depending on what whoever's watching, depending on what your qualifications are and what your insurance lets you go to, 30 feet, 80 feet, 100 feet, whatever it is. A lot of the work that we did was on those utility poles, installing those 1,000 access points. And so we leveraged bucket trucks and people inside the buckets and going up and lifting up and installing the equipment and jumping down and moving on to the next one. So it's a good question.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And, one more question on that, because you talked about access points. So when you say access points, you could mean fixed wireless access points or Wi-Fi access points.
Let me I get to the infrastructure here in just a second. Okay. So I'll answer those questions with the infrastructure slides. Yeah, this is I wanted to focus. I mean, the key here is that the plumbing, the equipment, and all the other stuff, it works. We know it works, and I'll show you, what we used in our recipe. But the bigger questions that these municipalities have to answer is why? What's the benefit? Because again, when you're talking to city commissions and you're talking to mayors and you're talking to city managers, these are not people who go to school for technical certifications for the most part. So it's not about bits and bytes and channel size and frequency allocation. It's not about that. It's about what's going to make the community better. And that's the key. Why are we using this technology to drive something that's going to make the community better? We're talking about problem solving. We're talking about solutioning. The equipment we know works. It's proven. It's out there working. And like I said, I will talk about that. But the key to me is understanding the impact in the community and solving the problem of what we're facing with not only the pandemic, but like we just had the deep freeze here in Texas 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of problems that can be solved using this. And I think that that's the bigger story to tell. So I want to focus on that a little bit more. So, and again, back on Wi-Fi specifically, why, and wireless, why do we choose to use wireless? There's a couple of schools of thought here, and there's a lot of people that have a very fiber first mentality. You have to have fiber. You have to have fiber infrastructure. It's not going to work. And that is just a load. I mean, you don't need fiber to do this. Is fiber great? Absolutely. But wireless can be done quicker. It can be done in days, not months, and it's absolutely cost effective. When we talk about the C and Wave platform, in our field tests that we've already had with this, we're seeing gigabit connections coming across this, and we can deploy that in a matter of hours, right? So you don't have to go trench fiber to imagine how long it would have taken to trench fiber to 1,000 poles. We got 1,000 poles up in 60 days using wireless. And if we want gigabit connections, we can just drop those in on top of this, and we can start doing gig across, down the street, down the main corridors, from tower to tower. We can utilize gigabit connections everywhere we need to. We don't need fiber to do it, because fiber is nice, but it's not a necessity. And I see so many people going down the road of, we have a local mayor here who said, well, we're going to be a connected community by 2023. And I'm like, dude, it's like it just turned 2021. You're talking about 2 years down the road, you're going to be a connected community. That's not a viable solution. That's not a solution. That's pushing it, right? And I get really frustrated. I know you can already hear it in my voice. I get frustrated with people who say that they want to provide solutions and they don't actually act on it. Now is the time to act. Now is the time it's needed. Now's the time that the spotlight is on it. Now is the time where people are making decisions based on this. They're seeing all the other communities doing it. Now's the time for action. And if you sit back and you say, well, we can't do it because we don't have fiber, you're not helping your community. You're hurting your community. You're not solving the problem. And I think that's a message that I really want to carry across, because my biggest point that I share on this slide is it costs on average $30,000 to trench a mile worth of fiber from point A to point B. That's 1 mile. That's point A to point B. That may include equipment, may not include equipment, depending on what you're doing. 1 mile for $30,000. But if you take $30,000 and you invest that in wireless infrastructure and you use the Cambium 450M, the Medusa access point with CBRS, you've got 4 APs that are installed. That's enough capacity for 400 homes, and I can install those in 2 days. And so there's a solution there where you can serve 400 homes or 400 streetlights or 400 utility poles or 400 businesses for the same amount of money that it takes you to run fiber from point A to point B. You don't need fiber to do this. It's great to have. And one of the coolest things that we see in Texas is that people will build out these wireless networks and then they'll trench the fiber when the money comes or when the budget's allocated, and they use the wireless as the backup for it, especially in areas like South Texas. We sit right on the Gulf Coast. So now we have a resilient network. When a hurricane comes through and something happens with the power on the fiber line, we still have a wireless connection to back it up. So now you've built a resilient network by not relying on one. And then specifically, why Wi-Fi? We looked at doing CBRS to the end user. We looked at LTE to the end user. We looked at providing a device right at their house. But you know what? Almost every device supports Wi-Fi. And people already know how to use it. And you already know how to support it. And people already know how to troubleshoot it. There's like a very flat learning curve when it comes to Wi-Fi. So giving the community the ability to use something that they're comfortable with and familiar with, to me, was one of the strongest points on why we went with a Wi-Fi device instead of a CBRS device or an LTE device or a point-to-multipoint device. We don't have to install anything. We don't have to teach people how to use it. They know how to connect to the network. We just have to let them know that it's available. So that was the key there. And then if you go back to that highlighted slide, engineering, when you properly design, engineer, and deploy a network, it actually works, but you have to do it the right way. If you skimp on one, if you don't design it properly or engineer it properly, when you go out to deploy it, it's not going to work the way that you need it to work. So putting the emphasis on that, to me, was key, making sure that we had it down pat before we put it out in the community. Best practices there. The first thing is identify who needs this. We had some early wins and we won hearts and minds by going out to communities that needed it the most first, and they were closest to our water towers. So we ended up getting some very early wins. We focused on student home sites that qualified for SNAP lunch benefits or the federal school lunch program. We filtered by median household income and then filtered by property value. And what it allowed us to do was really look at each individual household in our city and then group those together as communities to determine which ones were at the lower end of the economic scale that were most likely to not subscribe to broadband access. And then we coupled that with student data from the local school district so that we could say, okay, this may be a low-income neighborhood with no students, but there's a low-income neighborhood right across the street that's filled with students. Let's go to that one first. They probably could use it a little bit more than the other ones. So we really worked hard to methodically design this network to serve the community that could use it the most. This is pole number 1. This is the first one that we installed, and it sits right by an RV park that's chock full of students in the center of our community. And it's something that my wife and I used to, we've driven by so many times, and we always think to ourselves, man, if there's a place to start, that's probably the best place. And it ended up that's actually where we started. So pole number 1 served a market that was very, very hungry for it immediately. So the next component is just thinking about digital equity and what that means overall for your community, right? Because connectivity is not digital equity. Connectivity is one piece of it, but connectivity is only as good as the people that have a device. If you don't have a device, who cares if you have Wi-Fi? So devices are only good to those people that know how to use them, though, because if you put an iPad in the hands of someone who has no idea what it is, or a Chromebook in someone's hands, and they have no idea how to use it, then what good is your connectivity? And you need to be able to educate people on that. But education is only available when the students are and where they are. So if they're not in the classroom, if they're at home, if they're not at home and they're in the classroom or they're at the park, being able to properly educate people on how to use the devices and get the most out of them, to me, is key. Education's key with this. And with education comes the ability to drive better jobs. And that's what's going to help break our poverty cycle down in South Texas. When people can use technology, devices with connectivity to access resources, to learn online, to go to classes, to figure out what they can do, that's where they can turn around and they can create better jobs and better lives for themselves and their entire families. So that's what we're trying to do. And the way that we look at this and this is something that we've used for a while now, is I also have a nonprofit organization down in South Texas called Code RGV, and RGV is the Rio Grande Valley. And we focus on education. We focus on technical training. We work with the Texas Workforce Commission. We work with a number of the economic development corporations in our area. We try and drive education specifically to get jobs to help get people out of that poverty cycle. So when we look at what it takes in order to do that, we've got 4 legs to this stool, right? And those 4 legs are education, connectivity, devices, and workforce. Because without any one of these, you don't truly have a digital community. There isn't digital equity if one of these is missing. The same way that if you sat on this stool and only had 3 legs, it would fall over. So we need to make sure that all 4 of these are being addressed when it comes to creating a solution for our community. We're not just going into our mayor's office saying, yeah, I can provide Wi-Fi. That doesn't do the community any good. You need to have a strategy. You need to have a plan on how you can do that, because when you do that, then you elevate everybody. You give students a stool that they can actually sit on, and that can help them grow into the future, and that can help drive that full digital community. And that's what we're trying to do. Bunch of little smiling faces. We're trying to create that by using Wi-Fi, and connectivity is the means to that end. And to that note, what we focused on with ours is building partnerships. We needed to make sure that our partnerships were squared away so that everyone could contribute where they could. The city IT department wasn't going to go do technical training. The city IT department wasn't going to go out and find the funding for this. It took multiple internal city departments to do that, working with the school district, working with the nonprofit organizations in the community, and working with the community as a whole to really embrace this and make it a truly connected community. So feel free to reach out to students and districts and city departments and county, state, and federal governments, because when you get everybody involved in this, not only can they use it using separate SSIDs or separate VLANs or separate prioritized networks, not only can they take advantage of it, but now they have this sense of ownership that they're part of something much bigger than they are. And there's different responsibilities in each one of these. You know, when you look at connectivity, you can look to the municipality. They provide the connectivity, equal access to everyone, and that's what drives that success. The devices usually come from the school districts. You can work with chambers of commerce. You can work with you know, donations from people to figure out how to get laptops and handhelds into people's homes. And then the education component of it, working with nonprofit organizations in the community, working with the workforce commissions and workforce boards, online courses, a lot of that's available for education. But pushing that as an initiative is key to making sure that people get properly educated, and then start to go into the workforce component. Okay, now you know how to use it. Now you know how to obtain the education. Why not use that to get a better job? So it really works out hand in hand. As you can see, all the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. And for us, the best practice there is to also keep it local. Encourage local businesses. All of you that are watching this right now, encourage your local leaders to keep that business local in your community. Source your components local. Buy from local hardware suppliers. We bought a whole lot of pipe from local pipe yards. We bought lots of nuts and bolts from our local hardware store as opposed to ordering them from online. Hire local. Invest in the students and the people that are going to be using this network, so that way they have that sense of ownership and they can become proponents for this across the community. But if you really do that, it drives that sense of community. This is a snapshot of 6 of the individuals that helped us build our network. We look to local high school CTE programs. We look to local high school internship programs, and we look to our local University of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley to find students who are interested in technology and interested in wireless and interested in things like this. And we brought them in and we gave them jobs to do this. Instead of us trying to do it ourselves, we said, you know what, here's an opportunity that we can capture where we can use the students to learn, to be helpful, to put some money in their pocket. And that's what we did. And we took them out into the field and we showed them how we were doing it and what we were doing. You know, we let the tower climbers do the tower stuff. We let the bucket truck operators do their thing. But we brought the students out there to see why it's important to put 4 zip ties on a pipe instead of 2 zip ties. You know, why to route the cables around the back instead of around the front. So get involved in your community, help your community understand that this is a project that they're going to own, because everyone that you see here, they use this network, or their parents use this network, or their grandparents use this network. I posted something on LinkedIn the other day where it said, you know, all of our power is out. This is 2 weeks ago. All of our power is out, but the McAllen Wi-Fi is still up and running, and we can use it to connect to Netflix and we can watch a movie. That was the grandfather of one of the girls in this picture. He had sent that message in showing his appreciation for this network that was built. Plus, you get some really cool, funny graphics. I had to put this in there. You know, it was my birthday in the middle of this project, and they gave me this great little birthday card. I want my grave to offer free Wi-Fi so people visit it more often. Just kidding, we love you. That's it. You know, you get a fun sense of community there. But our best practice on top of that is to build this network. Once it's out there and running, build it for unlimited growth, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know if it's going to be used to disperse vaccine information, or if it's going to be the only thing that's up and running during the middle of a freeze. You want to be able to support as much technology as you can. And so our connectivity diagram that we've put together, this is basically the way that our network works. Now, we focused on the middle side there, which is the Wi-Fi access side, but the network that we built out using the 450 base stations allows us to either offer in-home broadband direct to the house. We can offer Wi-Fi access, or using the mesh technology from some of these devices, we could actually mesh into neighborhoods or deploy micro pops if we need to. So we built it out from a top-down approach to make sure that in the future, if they wanted to add to this network, it wouldn't be difficult to do it, because we never know how it's going to grow. And proof of that is that now we're looking at building out 217 intersections in our city, because they've seen the power of this network, and they say, you know what? If our students can use it to do Zoom classes, and they can use it to do WebEx, and they can use it to do online schooling, why can't we use it for video? Okay, well, why can't we use it for intelligent traffic solutions? Why can't we use it for smart city? So now the city's turning around saying, wait a minute, let's use this network for everything else that we can, where we don't have to trench fiber right away. We can get all of our traffic intersections online. We can start to do intelligent traffic management, which in McAllen is a huge, cool thing. And then as the budget comes in and they can trench fiber, then they can go right ahead. But now the city is really realizing the power of what wireless can do when it's properly deployed, because they can get a hold of the things that they didn't think they could do before. We've got a recycling center that's way up north that sells compost, that didn't have an internet connection, and now there's an internet connection where they have a voice over IP phone and they're not using cell phones. So we eliminated a monthly bill there. There's all these little things that the city or the municipality will start to realize that they can do once the infrastructure is in place. So don't lock yourself in by building a purpose-built network. Make sure that you build it so that it can grow. Now, what worked in McAllen, again, we deployed CBRS base stations on water towers, 4 base stations, creating a 360-degree coverage area on top of each one of them. Again, all GPS controlled and using SAS for the license assignment or frequency assignment. We partnered with Federated Wireless, who's our SAS provider, through the Cambium CN Maestro platform. It was really easy to set up. We just set everything up in Maestro, and Maestro handles all that back and forth between the SAS providers. So we don't have to have 6 different windows open in order to manage this network, which is totally awesome. So on the tower, we've got 4 base stations. We've got 6 towers with 24 base stations. Total, we're adding 2 more towers in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be up to a total of, I think 32. Yeah, if we do all 8, we'll be at 32 base stations across our city. Again, all frequency coordinated through SAS, through Federated Wireless. And then on each one of the street lights, we have a 14 dBi dish. What you see below the dish is the lightning protection unit. And then we power tap on the street lights, and then we run that down. We power up the Wi-Fi access point down at the bottom. And then the Wi-Fi access point, the E700, has a PoE out port. And we power up the CBRS device using the PoE out port from the Wi-Fi access point. So if one's online and not the other, we know, there's something going on there. So it helps us with troubleshooting. And from a visibility perspective, using Maestro, I can see all the way down to the Wi-Fi clients that are connected to the access point with a single pane of glass and a single dashboard. And again, there's no monthly fee or annual fee for using the platform on Maestro that we are right now. This was the mock-up that we provided. One of the key things was making sure that we stuck to NESC code. We needed to maintain that, working with our energy and utility pole providers. We needed to provide a safe space for tower or for pole climbers, and a safe space for the linesmen that would be out there in the future working on the lights or the power lines. So we maintained that 40-inch distance between the lowest element on the pole. We had to submit this so that they could approve this as our mock-up. And the next slide is really cool, because if you look at this mock-up right here and you look at what we actually deployed, it's very similar. So we did a pretty good job. Couple cool things there. The plates that hold that vertical arm onto the the horizontal street light arm, we manufactured that plate ourselves. We couldn't find anything out in the industry that met the needs of what we were trying to do. So we manufactured that plate with Wi-Fi stand, and we started deploying those at all of those locations. So we were able to custom build and craft a solution explicitly to handle what we were trying to do. And the impact of that, when we go out and we deploy this network, this is what our coverage area looks like. So we've got about 1,000 nodes spread out across this 20 square mile area. And this is a heat map that shows that we've got the majority of the city covered right now. We do have expansion plans in mind. We're already working with the city to identify neighborhoods where we can go into in order to expand this project. But overall, the impact of this has been huge. We're seeing a lot of positive feedback with what we're doing, including getting the Connectivity Hero of the Year award for 2020. We're showing that this impact here is phenomenal, but the impact that we have on our community is even more so. And having the students in and talking to them while they were building out this network, there was this really cool defining moment where we sat down and we said, you know what, we will never truly understand how impactful this network is to the people that are using it. And to me, that's one of those things that stands out, because we were in a neighborhood and we realized that in that neighborhood, we had essentially given every home in that neighborhood $50 a month. And that was kind of cool because they didn't have to worry about that. And, you know, I grew up, you know, a little under the level that you normally would. Grew up on the south side of the tracks, if you will. I was on the north side, but it was like close enough to be a little south. But, you know, I grew up not having a lot. And when you don't have a lot, you really learn to appreciate when you get a little bit. And so with that, you know, when we're able to give $50 a month to someone in the form of not having to worry about how their kid is going to get online, or if they can go to work that day, or if they can use their telemedicine app to help their grandmother, you know, who's sick. When you take that away and people can just use it and they know it's there and they know it's functioning and it's a benefit of living in the community, there's nothing like that. And I can't even fathom what people have been able to do with this because this has been made available to them. So we've taken that load off the back of 20,000 homes, you know, in the city of McAllen. And that impact, we're not going to see today, we're not going to see tomorrow, but we're going to start to see that over the course of the next 3 years and 5 years and 10 years, when our community is at the point where every student in the city of McAllen has access to broadband, whether it's through the Wi-Fi that's being deployed by the city, whether it's the hotspot that's being deployed by the school district, whether it's the connection that they have at home. Every student doesn't want for internet connectivity in our community. And that's an incredible thing to say, but it's a really cool thing to think about, because where is that going to put us in 5 years or 10 years? Because we didn't just look at this as a way to provide Wi-Fi. We looked at this as a way to make our community a better, more connected, digitally inclusive community. And all of those things I outlined in this deck are key to that, because if you don't have one, then something's going to fail along the way. So our best practice with this is also to build this so it's a sustainable network. The key here is making sure that when I'm gone, or when the city commissioner changes out, or when the mayor changes out, which is about to happen, how does this network continue to operate? So we're already working with our local school district and our CTE programs to develop courseware and curriculum, working with Cambium networks to train students in the CTE program to be the tech support desk for our community. So you'll have students that will be answering the phone so that they can help the people down the road with, you know, problems getting online, problems getting connected, whatever it is. And now those students who are going through that, they walk out of high school with a training, a certification, on-the-job experience. They can walk in any call center anywhere and they can easily pick up a job, and they understand how this works. Not to mention those students that worked on this project, some of them are already reaching out to people in their neighborhood and they're becoming the tech support. So instead of going out and getting a paper route, maybe now they turn around and they say, you know what, you know, Miss Jones, Miss Garza, I'll come down to your house and I'll help you, you know, for 20 bucks. I'll come and I'll fix your computer for you. So now we've created this entrepreneurship, you know, vibe with amongst all the people that are using this, because now we've opened up the market to it. One of the things that we're doing is in places where people live more than 600 feet away from the access point, if their signal level isn't what they would like, we're reselling an Cambium R195, and we're selling that into the community. And there's nothing stopping other people in my community from figuring out that they can make a repeater out of a device that can connect on one side to the network and on another side deliver the broadband inside the home. So who knows what can happen in the next, in the next couple of years. We may have just spurred an entire other job model in our market because of this network that's been built. The one of the other lessons learned, and this is I believe my last slide, one of the other lessons learned is when crisis hits, you can help. And what we saw was when we had that deep freeze 2 weeks ago, it knocked out infrastructure everywhere. My family was without power in our home for 6 days. Broadband was out, communications were out. I'm a ham radio operator, so that was kind of cool. But what happens when there's no connectivity and you're in a neighborhood and there's no power, there's no heat, no electricity, but the Wi-Fi is still working because it's attached to the power grid that runs the street lights. Now you have community members that can utilize that to get in touch with loved ones, to find out what's going on, to issue tickets, to have the electric company come and fix their transformer outside their house. Now you have this whole other communications option that's being made available by the community that they can utilize in the event of one of these natural disasters, which is huge for us in a hurricane-prone area. The other thing that we did is we looked at the critical communications for information disbursement. It's a mouthful of words right there. But the COVID vaccine, what was happening, in Vice News did a story on our area because of this, because there's so few people that are connected in our area, that all of the messages that were telling people how to get the vaccine, they were going out where? Social media, email. Okay, well, what happens if you don't have internet access? You can't access social media or email. So now without that, with that gap in connectivity, people weren't showing up to go get their vaccines, because we would get all these vaccines that would come in, but no one even knew that they were available. So our infrastructure helped provide the ability for people to get online and understand what was happening there. So you never know when it's going to pop up and where you can help. And speaking of help, if you all need any help with this, kind of an open book, try and put it all out there, but we are absolutely here to help you succeed. If you need us, call us, 956-320 Wi-Fi. Just let us know how we can help you become the connectivity heroes in your neighborhoods, because it's important that we figure out how to cookie cutter this across the globe. It's not just about what we're doing in McAllen. How can you take these lessons learned? How can you apply them in your community? How can you help your community get the same success that we've had in McAllen? So with that, those are the slides that I have. And I tried to keep my time, but I tend to talk a lot. So please feel free to ask away questions. Miss Mary, you got anything coming in here?
I don't see any questions right now. I just want to say your passion and excitement makes me want to go out there and jump in and help.
It's all the coffee, right? Commemorative McAllen Wi-Fi. That's the city of McAllen's logo. We stuck some Wi-Fi on this. Sorry. Yeah. Commemorative McAllen Wi-Fi coffee cup. So it's all
very
the coffee.
Nice. But I also love the dimension of the story around teaching the kids, right, about technology. I mean, and giving them an introduction. What a great example and opportunity. I mean, it's really exciting.
The thing about it, right, is that we've been building these networks for a while, and we've got a lot. I posted a link online the other day that was 6 years ago. We deployed a downtown Wi-Fi network with this really cool mayor down in Rio Grande City, and as we've deployed them, we've seen the technology grow. We've seen it become more robust, more feature rich, and better management, and more cost effective, and all this great stuff. So when this came up, when all this stuff happened, it was like, oh, here's my wave. You know what I mean? Here's my chance to jump on this and really do what I love to do and be passionate about it and put it out there and help people. But there was a pause there, and it was like, okay, well, how do we maximize this opportunity so it's not just about working with the city? And a lot of credit to my wife, because she sits back and she says, hey, don't miss this opportunity to do something incredible. And that's when we started saying, you know what, let's reach out to students. Let's get students involved in this, because they're going to use it. And if it works for them, it should work for other people. So it's a lot of really cool things happening there.
Well, and also I think the students probably think, oh, you have to be an engineer and it's really hard and I don't have the skills and all that. And today, as the technology and the software has advanced so far, it's not that hard, right? You don't have to have a PhD right here. So it shows the students that, oh, it is accessible. Oh, I can do it. It's not as hard as I thought, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great part of this work.
I mean, I'm the guy that you ask me what time it is, and I tell you how to build a watch, right? So when we had all these students in there, And it was like what we did, and it was really cool. And I've got pictures of it, and I could share stories for days and days and days about this. I texted the whole crew last night. I was like, y'all, I'm going through pictures of this, and it's just bringing back such good memories. One of the things that we did when we built this out is we needed a warehouse to do this in, and our office, doesn't have this huge, amount of space to build out 1,000 nodes for this network. So we worked with our local chamber of commerce. They sourced a local building for us that happened to be right across the street from our office. It was an old church that they turned into, an event center. And we rented out this deal, which was great for the chamber of commerce because they weren't doing any weddings or birthday celebrations or anything else. So they didn't know how they were going to make revenue. So I said, hey, I'll rent it out for a flat fee. So I helped the chamber of commerce, by doing that as well. And we set up stations all along the area, and we brought the students in, and we said, okay, station number 1, you're going to assemble the power kits. Station number 2, you're going to assemble the dishes and the CBRS feed horn. Station number 3, you're going to configure the access point. Station number 4, you're going to put all this stuff together. Station number 5, you're going to zip tie it to make sure all the cable management is done. And we set these stations up. Yeah. And it was so cool. And what was cool about it was we had one group of students work on each one of the stations, and then we rotated until we found out the people that fit those the most, but they all got hands-on experience doing every single part of it.
Fantastic.
Until we got to the point where, like, you know what? There's a girl named Janelli, and Janelli is a little, I'm 6'5". Janelli's a little smaller than I am. And we called her Tiny Hands because she has these tiny little hands. And so when it came to making some of the connections, she was the perfect person to do it because her little tiny hands fit in there, My big old banana hands didn't work as well as hers did. So we were able to figure out who went where. And we got to the point where when we started deploying these access points and these poles, man, we were clicking along. One of them, I think the high for one installer was about 40 poles in one day. 40, that's 40.
Wow.
That's an entire neighborhood worth of Wi-Fi internet access in one day that this one person, his name is Amin Khalifa, went out and just rocked it and put those things up. And we had competitions amongst the installers, and we're like, whoever gets the most polls, we would give them a gift card or some money or whatever. So we created this culture that wanted people to succeed, and they wanted this project to succeed. And every day I get text messages from them saying, when's the next one? When's the next one? Where are we going next? What are we going to do next? So it's created a really fun working environment.
Yeah. So it looks like we do a technical question here about the range of antennas. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah.
And then there's another one that looks like about the dashboard as well.
Let's see. Amin Khalifa's a rock star. Yeah. I see Shane on here. Shane Rose. Man, it's good to see you, buddy. We've known each other for a minute, the range of antennas. So I'm not sure what that means. I think I know what that means, but on these, what we did is, again, to go back and have that discussion on how far Wi-Fi goes. It's never about the access point. It's about the client device that's connecting to it. And I've had this conversation with so many city commissioners and mayors and city managers that basically the way that I talk about it is, imagine there's someone sitting outside your house, right? And they're in the middle of the street, and they've got a big speaker on a pole, and they've got their music cranked up. In South Texas, we've got this guy named Ramon Ayala. He's the king of the accordion, right? So imagine this guy sitting outside in the middle of the street. He's got accordion music blaring as loud as it can go, right? That's similar to an access point. It's just making this loud noise, and it's pushing it out in all these different directions. So if you're inside your house, you have no problem hearing that music from the middle of the street, so much so that it's bothering you. You can't get on a webinar. You can't do your work. And it's so loud that you have no problem receiving that sound. And some could say that you receive it at 4 bars or 5 bars or whatever, whatever nomenclature you want to use. You're receiving it fine. But if I sit here in just a normal tone of voice, and it's my office, then it's my living room, then my kitchen, and then it's a dining room, and then it's the front yard, and then it's the street. If I sit here and I say, hey, hang on, guys. Hey, can you please turn that music down? I'm trying to get on a webinar here. I got like 20 people, and I'm talking about Wi-Fi with. Do you think that he's going to hear me? He's not going to hear me. My wife in the other room can't even hear me. So it's not about how well I can hear that music or that sound or that signal. It's about how loudly or how properly I can communicate with the person on the other end. Herein lies the problem. it's not about how many bars you receive the signal at, it's how well this thing transmits to the access point outside. And so if you think about how far a signal goes, it's not about how far it goes. It's about how well does this communicate back to that device. Because if you can't send it a request, then what's the point? So I always use that, as kind of a way to talk about how far. Now, that being said, everyone still wants to know, okay, yeah, but I mean, like, how far does the signal go? Again, not how far the signal goes. But what we did is we look at the average usage, the average case here is about 500 to 600 feet. And so within 500 to 600 feet from that center area, we know that we can probably get a signal inside the first room of the house, as long as there's a wall or something facing outside. We didn't build the network to get all the way into every room in the house. We built it so that people could use it in either a common area or in the front yard or on their front porch or somewhere out there. But we built it around that, about 500, 600 feet. So anything above that, you're, again, to quote my buddy Sam Clemens, right? It's it depends. What's the house made out of? Because if my house is made out of brick, what happens if the house is made out of wood? What happens if the house is made out of steel reinforced concrete? It all depends. But what we've seen is about a 500, 600 500, 600 foot radius from the center of the from the center of that deal. So I hope that answered your question, Daniel. Talk about the dashboard.
Hey, Drew, do laptops have the same range as phones? It's about the same, 500, 600 feet.
It depends. Depends on the manufacturer. I know that my work laptop versus my Chromebook is completely different, and I know that even these two phones have a completely different propagation model, right? Both of them, one may not work as well as the other. And then, what happens when it goes into low power mode? The first thing that it sacrifices is the ability to transmit. So depending on your battery level, it depends, So you never know, but I know that, again, this is the gotcha. People want to see circles on maps. They want to see that coffee cup stain on top of a map that says this is where everybody has the Wi-Fi's. You know what I mean? And we don't do that. We rely on higher end tool sets to do that signal propagation modeling. Cambium has a lot of them that are available. We absolutely utilized every tool in the entire tool set on this network. Talking about the dashboard, we use CN Maestro to manage the entire thing from top all the way down to bottom. And again, Maestro is such a great piece of software. I can't say enough about it. Cloud-based, there's an on-prem version as well, but we use the cloud-based one. We can all get in there. We can all monitor it and see what's happening and find out what the alarms are and what's going up and what's going down and get the reporting. So we use that dashboard for it. But we did utilize CN Heat, which I'm not even sure I want to talk about because it's like a secret weapon. CN Heat blew my mind. Like it blew, I can't even properly describe how well CN Heat worked in the CBRS spectrum. I mean, down literally to the street light. Is it going to work here or not? And we got situations where we're like, you know what? It won't work in here, but if you go 5 feet this way, it'll work. And I didn't think it was going to work as well as it did. Not going to lie. I was like, oh, let's see if it's worth it. Totally worth it. CN Heat was such an incredible piece of software when it came to the design and planning of this network. And then of course, Link Planner, best tool in the industry. I mean, hands down, especially for the price. It's free. Link Planner is incredible. So maybe what end users, when it comes to bandwidth, that's a great question. So we set that. So the bandwidth question was, FCC says 25 megabit is what it qualifies as broadband. So we went into this saying, well, let's set it at 25 megabit. And then we got a little gun shy and we're like, okay, well, let's set it at 10 and see what happens. Well, we loaded it up with 10. No problems. Well, let's crank it up to 15. Cranked it up to 15, see what happens. No problems. Cranked it up to 20. No problems. Cranked it up to 25. That's where we're at right now. So we've got it limited on a per device utilization. So it's 25 meg down and it's up to 10 meg up, but it's burstable. So it's set so that you'll always get at least one and you can burst up above that. It works really well. We're able to do all kinds of, I put my kids on it to make sure that my kids could learn, because I don't want to, Mary, I don't want to give your kids something that wasn't good enough for my kids or vice versa, So we tested it with my children. They got to be the guinea pigs on it. So we made sure that it worked for them and they could do their school. Again, that goes back to working with a company that is hands-on and that knows this product versus someone who reads data sheets and puts it out there.
Yep.
Sorry if my
We have time
question's
for
not
one more
suitable for the
question.
webinar. Whoa, let's see what this one says.
Yeah.
Not suitable.
This one's
Huh?
from
This is my cup
Nepal.
of
No,
tea.
yeah. It sounds like he's from Nepal and wants some advice on how to get started, from what I can
Yeah, it's, you know what? So being a Cambium partner, and not to pour the Kool-Aid too rich into my coffee, but one of the great things that's offered with Cambium is all of the knowledge is online. You can log into the partner portal, sign up as a partner. All the training and sessions are there for you to consume in, you know, at your leisure. So a lot of the stuff, you know, especially like for the students that we bring in, they can come in and they can learn everything through the partner portal. They can watch the videos, they can read the case studies, they can get all the data sheets. It's a great place to start specifically with this vendor. If you want to go for something a little bit larger and you want to focus on Wi-Fi, I would always recommend the Certified Wireless Network Professionals Group, the CWNA. You know, start with the Certified Wireless Technician, the CWT, and then work your way up into the CWNA and then the CWNE after that. That's a great path. It's vendor agnostic. It's a fun way to learn more about wireless and how it started, but it's specific to Wi-Fi. If you're looking for CBRS and some of the other stuff, there's other tracks out there that can help you learn.
Yeah, great that so much is available online. So
yeah,
I think it's one more question, because I think we have to wrap up. We're just about out of time.
How many employees, contractors involved in the 60-day giddy up? So we ran 5 crews, and those 5 crews were 2-man crews. There was someone driving and someone in the bucket. And so they would jump in the bucket truck, they would go over, lift up, install, come down. So that was out in the field. We had 15 employees inside the property who were doing the kitting and the building out. We had 2 people doing configuration, and then we had project management on top of that as well. So we made sure that we had a pretty decent sized group working on everything, you know, 15 to 20 people to get it done in record time. And is the webinar being recorded?
Yes. We'll make that webinar available so anybody can watch it on demand.
Cool.
So,
Darren, I appreciate the comments on there. I appreciate the passion. You know, I think that's it on questions. I don't know if we have anything else, but y'all please hit me up on LinkedIn, get at me on Twitter. I love talking about this, so I can go for days, but we're coming up on an hour, so I should probably.
Yeah, it might cut us off on the hour, but thank you everyone for joining, and thank you so much, Drew and Mary. This was not only really interesting and informative, but inspiring as well. So thanks for your insight, Drew. Like you guys were saying, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar to all attendees shortly, so be on the lookout for that. But until then, enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Thanks, y'all.
Congratulations again, Drew.
Thank you.